Hey everybody, welcome. Tara Bachland here with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and I'm here with, you may recognize, Phyllis D. She is a very significant contributor and teacher at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and we were talking the other day about how prevalent pneumonia, and particularly walking pneumonia, is currently. And so I asked her, hey, let's just do a quick 15-20 minute update on what you can do holistically to help support your body and some things you may want to know if you've already gone into the doctor and so forth. So we're looking at practical tips, what to maybe ask your doctor when you go into the doctor's office, herbs and foods, nutrition. You may not know that in addition to being a traditional herbalist, Phyllis is also a traditional naturopath. And so she brings us such a wide perspective. She is also a mom and grandma. So she has so much to share. That's why I wanted to bring her on. So Phyllis, fill us in.
All right. So I was telling Tara I have never seen the prevalence of walking pneumonia the way it has been this year. And obviously it's some sort of contagious issue because it's kind of like sweeping the country. And it's lasting a long time. I have clients, I have family members with it. And in even 4 weeks into it, they're still having kind of issues of coughing or not coughing, and we'll talk about a productive cough here in a second. But, some doctors are just throwing antibiotics at it, and people are not getting any better, which maybe it's a viral, maybe the wrong antibiotic. So there's a lot to talk about here in a short period of time. So kind of let's get started. If you have experienced kind of the shortness of breath, chest pain, congestion, wheezing in your chest, you know something's going on in your lungs, you went to the doctor and you just received this diagnosis of pneumonia or walking pneumonia or chest infection, whatever terminology they might be using, it is important, I think, when we have this kind of prevalence of infection, um, almost epidemic, not quite, but definitely hugely prevalent across the country, that it's important to understand that even if it is viral, it can turn into a secondary bacterial infection. So where does the virus end? Where does the secondary bacterial infection begin? That is something that is going to be an unknown entity unless you're going to the doctor. And so if you're 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, and you've still got this or you're coughing up green stuff, I'm going to encourage you to go back to your doctor, but to ask, please do a sputum test. Let's find out what is in my lungs. And so a sputum test is simply put where you're coughing and spitting into a tube, and they send it to a lab, and they're going to see what grows in it, what organisms is growing from your deep cough. Yuck. And so becomes really important because then if it is bacterial infection, they can target the correct antibiotic to the organism. So instead of just going like, oh, let's do a Z-Pak, let's do Bactrim, let's do amoxicillin, instead of just throwing antibiotics at it. So talk to your doctor, encourage a sputum test. Now let's talk about some really practical things that you can do around the house to help kind of expurge that mucus. I've had clients who have had a very overly productive cough. They're coughing, 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 and it's wet and stuff is coming up. But I've also had clients who have got into the stage of coughing, but nothing is coming up. Number one, and this is particularly important with little kids, keep them warm. Keep that chest warm. Little kids don't seem to have the same barometer for temperature that I do, and I think barometer is actually the wrong word there. but but anyway, you know what I mean. So it's like freezing outside and they're running around with no coat on and they're totally happy. But what is going on in the body when we're not keeping our body warm enough is blood flow gets constricted. And blood flow moves into the internal organs. It constricts the vessels around the heart. And so this is why heart attacks can happen to you, even healthy people who are shoveling snow and below freezing temperatures. This constriction is happening around the heart. Well, it's even happening in little kids. I mean, they're definitely running hotter than me at my age, but still, we want to ensure that the body is kept warm enough that the tissues are getting adequate blood flow. So this means that put a coat on them, put a sweatshirt on them, put a little t-shirt, layer them up. And they may go, "Oh, this is too warm." And you go, "Well, that's just fine. We're going to keep you warm." To encourage blood movement around the body, and the lungs has its own vascular system and its own respiratory system. I know we think of the lungs as simply this organ that is inhaling, air and exhaling carbon dioxide and moisture, but it has to also have oxygen to do its job, right? So it has its own vascular system that's bringing oxygen in. Without adequate oxygen, we're not going to heal. Or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Without adequate oxygen, can take longer to heal. So just be aware, keep the body warm, keep the house warm if you possibly can. And this will go a long way to helping free up some energy to focus on healing, and also keeping the house a little bit warm helps relax the lungs because everything's been constricted in the cold, and it helps relax the lungs. And so now things can start moving. If so, bump the thermostat up a little bit, put on some extra clothes, make sure there's socks on those little feet, and they're not running around barefooted in the house on the cold floor, right? Also, if it's a dry cough, or if they've got a little bloody every once in a while, the little blood speckle coming out of the nose, or even a nosebleed, you might need to humidify the air also, because winter air can get really, really dry, especially with forced heat. And so it's important to add a little humidity. For example, if you have a wood stove, put a kettle of water on and just keep it filled all day, and it'll bring in some moisture and humidity into the air. Buy a humidifier. They make small personal ones, they make big ones. Do as much of your house as you possibly can, but particularly the room where the person is who's feeling so sick. I don't encourage essential oils in a humidifier. I know that some people do like to do that. But especially with kids and infants, I kind of err on the side of caution, and I would prefer just that nice, water going into some warm air in the environment. That's really all the body needs. Worst case scenario, you can get a hot shower. Just take yourself if you have it, into a hot shower. Let all that steam help open everything up. Want to make a productive cough. If there are no contraindications, elecampane is an excellent herb for bringing up mucus from deep in the lungs, especially green mucus. So elecampane in an herbal formula with mullein and marshmallow and maybe a little spearmint for flavor can really help open the lungs and act as an expectorant and help everything keep moving. If there is a lot of tightness, like on one side of the lungs, you might try heating pad on the lowest setting to kind of help warm the mucus that's kind of there in a glob and not moving. This is how important warming the area is. But I'm going to say caution on the left side. You don't want to ever put a heating pad over the heart area. That the heart is very sensitive to heat, and it'll start causing a little fluttering and palpitations, and it can be really uncomfortable, and you never want to put high heat over the heart area, right? You can the back and the lower lungs, but only on the lowest setting, just enough to warm everything up. There's also flannel. This is where flannel PJs work awesome. Our flannel underwear, what are those called? Legging, thermal, under armor garment undergarments.
Mhm.
I'm here in the South, we don't use those a lot anymore. So, but if you're colder in the North, excellent tools, clothing tools. All right, so back to herbs. That is a little nice, quick formula. And if you have a child and you're going to use this formula, please, at the basic, do it by body weight. So if you're assuming 100 pounds is an adult weight and your child weighs 25 pounds, well, that's 1/4 of an adult dose. And this is kind of like a basic formula. There are some more extensive formulas out there on the internet that will break it down a little bit more. But I found in my practice and in my family that works pretty good. Just do it by body weight. When someone has a lot of lung issues, hydration is really, really, really important. Just make sure there's enough water going in to help push the mucus out. And you go, how is water pushing the mucus out? Well, it's keeping it thin and moist so it moves. If you're too dehydrated, that mucus is going to kind of clump and make little balls or kind of dry up in there. And that's a description. That's not a medical term. That's just kind of a description, a physical description to bring awareness in. So the more fluid that's going in, the more likely you're going to be able to expectorate. Right. So
Why,
that's go ahead.
and what is expectoration? Why do you want that to come out?
Expectoration is all the bacteria side effects, off there's a word I'm looking for here. Um, the byproducts of the body attacking the bacteria, the byproducts of the body attacking the virus, whichever it might be, and they're kind of laying there in the lungs. And the lungs, um, the best way to clear the lungs is cough. You want to get the crud out of there. You want to get the phlegm out of there. It doesn't leave handily any other way. Coughing is the best. So that's why we want to expectorate. Expectorate just simply means cough up the gunk.
Hmm.
Get rid of the gunk, right?
Good. Yeah.
If a person is sensitive to dairy, I would say this is not a good time to do dairy. Any mucus forming food could be suspended during until wellness returns. And so that means making the diet a little more simple. And when people are feeling bad like this, you know, you we would want to eat healthy all the time, and that is what I want to do all the time. But I know when I'm sick, I don't want a lot of my healthy foods that I'm going to want when I'm better. So I don't want steamed broccoli. I don't want fried. I don't want cruciferous veggies that I typically love other times. So I really encourage people to be intuitive with what does my body want. So I noticed my granddaughter wanted more oranges. Well, we do the little tangerine things, and it was like, how many of these can I peel? You know,
Mhm.
but I honored that because that's what she wanted. And, she needed, from my point of view, all that vitamin C, and that was handy. And it's better to get these basic nutrients from a food than it is from a supplement, although sometimes we just need to do supplements too. So be very intuitive with the body. Chicken soup is always good, made from a really good bone broth, or even a bone broth, fish or beef, whatever floats that person's appetite, what gets their appetite going. But the bone broth based soups are really good when a person has a lung infection. It's getting moisture in there, it's hydrating, plus it's bringing in all those good fats at the same time. Fruits are good, especially citrus and grapes. And so just be intuitive, be caring. What does that person want to eat? What do you want to eat? 'Cause sometimes you don't feel like yet, eating anything. And then there's mucus falling on your stomach and your stomach doesn't feel good. So this is kind of like basics. If you wanted to do supplements during this time period, quercetin, zinc, vitamin C, um, omega-3 fatty acids, resveratrol, vitamin D. These are all going to be excellent for immune system support. All right. Can you think of anything else, Tara? I was trying to keep it to 15 minutes.
That's awesome. You packed so much into 15 minutes. When you were mentioning the hydrating the air,
Yeah,
humidifying the air,
humidifying the air.
This is a perfect time to make bone broth. You have a
Yes.
double whammy, right? You get your bone broth that you need, and you fill the air with yummy scent and the humidity.
Yes. Great idea. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to put a link in the chat also for the preventative health, preparative herbal remedies, we call it, that you and Matthew have on the site as well. There's also, you can search for respiratory health and immunity. There's a terrific course there. And that was actually, I probably can't say the word because they'll block us. But during the recent pandemic or semi-recent, you and Matthew did a full-on series on respiratory health and immunity. So that's on the site as well.
Awesome.
How about a few questions since you managed to get that all done in
Yeah.
less than 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Rebecca says, I love a hot tea as it would be warming as it goes down.
Perfect. Perfect. Any hot herbal tea is going to be helpful. I really like chamomile, especially for the little kids. And don't be afraid to put a tiny bit of sugar in there. Sugar is actually a nice little expectorant.
Interesting.
Yeah. And will help a dry cough.
Would you use like a turbinado sugar, more like a raw sugar, I assume?
That would be a little better, but and I'm only talking about like a fourth of a teaspoon. So it's
Oh,
not a
okay.
lot of sugar anyway. Fourth, it's a cup. It's a little kid. So just enough sweetening. But sugar is an expectorant. It relaxes this area and it will help us move mucus.
So does it act differently than honey then?
Honey is more moistening. It's not quite as relaxing in the area. So that's why I prefer a little just plain old awful white table sugar.
Mm, so
It
interesting.
has its uses.
Yeah. So I was reading a little bit about this beforehand because, you can tell when something is going around. It's like you hear about people, getting this or that. So we know that pneumonia and walking pneumonia in particular is really
Yeah.
going around.
Yeah.
But apparently it's really affecting kids. And I heard theoretically that is because, kids were locked up we were locked up for so long, right? And they didn't get the natural immunity in the last couple of years. So it's really surging in kids. So Alberto asks, is there anything you would recommend for kids to take on an ongoing basis to help reduce the chances of catching a respiratory infection or illness?
The nutrients is what I'm going to recommend, not herbs.
Mm.
Um, I have the philosophy is in my traditional training that if you use an herb every day when you really need it, you've got to go up here and use like 5 times as much. So if you used elderberry every day and then still got sick, well, what has that elderberry done? Right? It's brought your immune system to here, but pathogens still find the way in, and now you have to do this much to get a response. So I prefer, like mild herbs, tonic herbs on a regular basis, and then making sure there's good nutrients like, the vitamin C. And for little kids, vitamin C gummy is fine. If you want to do as a supplement, I actually like those myself. They have orange in them and they taste really good. Um, making sure there is adequate nutritional food in the diet, so I think that's really important too. But I'm not going to recommend any herbs on a regular basis for the reason I just mentioned.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great herbal insight. I'm going to encourage people also to check out the Plant Experience group that is new to the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, really to help those of you who are new to herbalism, especially get to dive in at any level. We have, for example, instructions and a recipe there on how you can make an onion poultice, which can be very helpful for helping to move things. You do want to, there are special instructions so you can also put it on your feet, especially for little ones.
Right.
And we have teachers and staff in there to guide you along. You can find that on Facebook. That's the Plant Experience. And also at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, just join the community. It's all free. And you can enroll to join us there. And we're providing seasonal, week by week insights. For example, it's the holiday seasons right now, right? And so many people get stressed. I mean, it's a joyful time, but it's a stressful time, especially when you have people getting sick. And that relieving stress alone can help prevent illness as well. So recently been posting tons of tips there also on how to herbally and naturally ease the stress during the holidays as well. So really want to welcome you all to join us there. And also, you probably still have tons of questions. We have a number in the chat still, but we want to keep this as close to 20 minutes as possible. Phyllis is available for consultations. I know we get that question a lot, and you can just visit her on her website. It's simply phyllisdlight.com, right?
Yeah.
And then
That's it.
You can get in contact with this amazing herbalist, traditional naturopath, and grandma and mom who speaks from experience and a vast knowledge as well. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's about it. Other than I want to say save your herbs for when you need them. I mentioned elderberry, but echinacea is also, echinacea is not an herb you should be doing every day. Save it for when you need it.
That's so interesting, especially when you get into herbalism. You're just like you get your favorites, right? And you want to use them all the time. But it is good to rotate and take breaks.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Rebecca says, thank you for sharing. And thanks for joining me. I think this will be very helpful.
All right. See y'all later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.